Well, good day. Welcome to Talks. I'm Daryl Rosenstein, your host, and we talk about marketing technology on Talks. And today we're actually going to be talking about people. And to do that, we're actually going to be talking to a person in the form of Alex Pusenjak, the VP of People and Talent at Fluent Commerce, a mock provider of order management systems and of record, one of the fastest growing providers with an OMS in the category's history. Without further ado, Alex, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much, Daryl. Wonderful to be here with you today.
Can you share with us a little bit about your journey there at Fluent Commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Vice President of People and Culture here at Fluent Commerce. We're a global tech company headquartered down under here in Sydney, Australia. And my role really drives the people and culture strategy across talent acquisition, business partnering, employee experience, compensation and benefits, as well as learning and development. So Fluent Commerce as a business, we help e-commerce companies get an accurate view of inventory availability across all their stock locations so they can provide a great customer experience. We also help them ship from the right location every time so they can deliver orders profitably. So our goal is to be that engine that powers global commerce. From a size and headcount perspective, we're currently sitting at 170 folks across Asia Pacific, Europe, and North America. 50% of our employees are here in Australia, with the rest evenly split across EMEA and the US as well. When I joined 2 years ago, we had about 70 employees. So we have actually grown by 100 in the past 2 years. Really kind of when I walked into the organization, it was a pretty blank canvas in the people space. So year one was all about building. Year two has been about scaling. And year three and beyond is all about delivering that global standard.
Well, with a growing company, obviously your recruiting process needs to encompass a number of regions, time zones, cultures. How do you build and how have you continued to build your recruiting process?
It's been a wild journey, Daryl. So when I joined, our talent acquisition team was a team of one, and they were supporting each part of the world. So you can imagine a lot of early morning or late night calls for our head of talent acquisition. We've actually now tripled that team to three, covering each corner of the globe. So we do have that local knowledge and expertise. When I was building out the recruitment philosophy, it was all about how do we give the best experience to candidates. So what we do at the 30-day milestone of all onboarders and new starters is we seek feedback about their hiring and onboarding experience at Fluent Commerce. And it's so powerful because we hear feedback that the recruitment process has been really positive. Even we hear from unsuccessful candidates for some roles, they actually felt really comfortable. The frequency of communication is right. And they even tell their network about us. So in a sense, we still build that brand kind of trust and loyalty from everyone within our pipeline as well. And we also really want to capture the right data back to the business about how many candidates we're attracting, what sources, where they're coming from, what's the average time to close a role, what parts of the process potentially slow us down. And what I'm really proud in the last 12 months is we've turned the lights on for a new applicant tracking system. So gone are the days of using Excel spreadsheets to manage and track open recs. We've rolled out unconscious bias training globally. We've delivered hiring manager training. And we've also been partnered and endorsed by organizations such as Work 180 to be recognized for raising standards and being an employer of choice for women as well, which is really cool.
What has been your philosophy on candidate experience, and how exactly have you enabled that using the ATA? And if I might ask, what solution have you chosen to manage that?
We chose an ATS or an applicant tracking system called Pinpoint. They are one of the fairly newer players on the market, but they are fantastic in the sense of they have very kind of strong integrations with probably most HRIS systems out there. There's also great customization, so you can really set the approvals, the requirements that fit best for your business. And the other key selling point for us was they actually build your careers page out for you as well. So rather than having to invest dollars and having to spend that time and energy and actually building out your own careers page, they have that ability to do it for you, and a lot of that heavy lifting, the integration with the um, roles as well. Coming back to your question in regards to our philosophy on the candidate experience, our philosophy is quite simple. It's let our company culture shine and ensure that the candidate experience reflects our company culture as well. So what I mean by this is it's about making the entire process as transparent as possible for candidates, investing in the people and collaborating across the organization. So unfortunately, recruiters, they do get a really bad rep. If they've ghosted candidates in the middle of the process, or they're trying to place people in a role that's not the right fit just to try and close out that requisition. We really take that a complete opposite approach. So we see recruitment as an investment in people. We want to make sure it's a great fit on both sides, and we work really hard to make sure that's the case. So for every person who we interview within an open role, we start to build that rapport about them. So our team generally wants to know about their interests because it also helps us get to know them better.
Well, you mentioned that you've trained your hiring managers on your process, and I'm interested in how you actually developed that, and what were the roadblocks to adopting it, if any?
Yeah, we definitely have to be joined at the hip and bring our hiring managers on the talent acquisition journey. Ultimately, these folks want the best person to join their team in the company. And the way that I see it is hiring managers really manage the end of the funnel as well. So if they don't follow best practices, or if they are slow at following up, we may end up with like a bad hire or none at all. And essentially, a bad or no hire is going to be time consuming and cost ineffective for the business. So what we do is we actually ask hiring managers to write a short mission for the role. That way, the entire hiring team can understand what the role is looking to accomplish. We don't just want to hire someone for the sake of hiring. And this preparation work is exactly what engages hiring managers in the recruitment process early on, and also gives them a sense of responsibility as well. So getting that buy-in early on is super, super essential. And it also helps them learn to respect the recruitment process. So no one likes having to chase hiring managers. Can you leave this interview feedback? They'll already have provided useful comments because they understand the reason and rationale behind it. So we still do train our hiring managers on best practices, the do's and don'ts, what you can ask, what you can't ask. In a virtual, hybrid, remote setting, unfortunately, we can't kick people under the table as much. So it definitely, that training is still completely essential as well. And also, when interviews are done right, we tend to find hiring managers enjoy them a lot more as well. Often, they might feel as nervous as the candidate, especially if they're fairly new to the game. But if they're kind of bought into the process early on, it's not as scary and intimidating for them. And Daryl, I just wanted to also touch on the collaboration piece as well. So, what we do is we really extend this across the organization, and we view peer interviews and cross functional participation as crucial pieces of our recruiting process. So, for example, we've recently had a product design role, and they won't just meet with product designers, they'll also speak to a product manager, even potentially an engineer, because they're folks that they'll work closely with, not just their direct team as well. And the beauty about this is that it also allows to showcase different facets of the role and different parts of the business, which then also kind of brings additional points of view into the interview process as well.
In terms of the overall process itself, how many steps are in your interview process?
Yeah, it really depends on the role and the level of seniority. So typically our process is it starts off with a screening or an introduction phone call with a member of the talent acquisition team. This really is the kind of the gate, whether they progress to the next stage or potentially the role, the company, they might be not be the right fit at this point in time. Let's say they kind of move forward. This is typically followed by a panel interview, potentially with their hiring manager and also one or two other peers or managers within the business. Depending on the role, the following step could be a technical interview. If you're in a technical role, such as a software engineer, there's a coding challenge. Or if you're in a go to market sales role, often we add in a sales presentation or a sales pitch as well. Typically, then the final stage is back with the talent acquisition manager and hiring manager just to cover off any questions, set expectations, or for a senior role, we would normally have a member of our executive leadership team on the call as well. This is really just to demonstrate to the candidate how much we value them and what they can bring to the company as well. So typically, all up, it's around 30 days on average from start to finish. Often we're quite lucky that it can be fast tracked a little bit. Sometimes for more complex roles, we take a little bit more time. And often it's also down to availability of both the candidate, but also folks on the hiring panel as well.
So it sounds like it does take a bit longer for an executive hire. Have you had to hire any executives at the C suite or at the VP level since you've been on board?
We have. So we ran a very thorough global search for our chief technology officer last year. And I can say that definitely didn't hit our 30 days of average hiring time. But we still do tend to follow the same kind of process in terms of who is having a seat at that table as part of the hiring process. Of course, when we have a wider search than just a state or country, we also want to do more of our due diligence, and that often takes longer as well. But the great thing about it is we do flex our availability. We're a global company, so we understand often folks just can't make an interview during their core hours. So, and we also understand the distractions that might be in the background, or we want to kind of rip off the band-aid of you have to come in for an in-person interview, given the majority of our workforce is remote. So we very much are flexible and yeah, we want to make things as easy as possible in that regards.
Yeah, I've actually gotten rid of one of the distractions I sometimes have in my office by sedating my dog this afternoon, and that's why he hasn't been participating in the conversation thus far. But you brought up an interesting point where you're recruiting folks that are not necessarily in Australia or in Sydney, and I'm kind of curious, how would you compare recruiting folks in Sydney and Australia with the U.S. or with Europe for that matter, which I'm putting in what bucket, which is very inappropriate. But we're going to do
uh,
this for the moment.
yeah, that's a great question, Daryl. And there are a lot of similarities, but also different nuances and difference in terms of what questions candidate asks, such as career progression, company values. What does that future outlook look like as well? So for US roles, we definitely get more questions surrounding benefits, which you can understand why. Whereas in Australia and the UK, we definitely get more questions around work-life balance. How quickly can I climb up that career progression, especially with Gen Zs coming through? One interesting kind of nuance is about notice periods. So when we're hiring in France and Germany, the typical notice period is actually 3 months compared to 2 weeks in the US. So for our 2024 European hires, we're actually kicking off the process in the next couple of months, just given it does take time to identify the talent, go through the hiring process, and then, hey, guess what? I have got a 3 month notice. So if I'm trying to get them to start on the 1st of January 2024, we need to kind of kick off this process a lot earlier. So that's really kind of unique and different because in Australia, it's typically 4 weeks. it just really fluctuates depending where you are in the world.
Do people tend to fall out more with that longer notice period than they would with the short notice period, or is it pretty much uniform? If they sign the offer, depending on wherever they are, they're going to start.
Thankfully, we haven't seen any dropouts, even with like the longer notice period. I think if you've got someone who has committed to going through an interview process, which can often be emotionally kind of tolling on you, or made that decision to leave, they've made that decision for reason and purpose, whether it was about remuneration, lack of career development or advancement. They could have a manager who they don't have that trust buy-in connection with. So typically they're already on the hook.
Well, that's lovely to hear. It scares the daylights of me out of me if I had a candidate that was going to give 3 months notice for a leadership role for a startup. I can't imagine any organization having the patience to hire them. But then again, it's a different scenario. And
It is definitely tough, and what we definitely tend to do is have those kind of check-in touch points. So 3 months is a long period of time. So it would be for our talent acquisition team or even the hiring manager every couple of weeks, just check in um, and share something about kind of the company, or here's what we've recently kind of been talking about at a team level, or really excited to have you come on board. There's 8 weeks to go. There's 4 weeks to go. Here's what your onboarding will look like. Get people really invested before they join. Um, Obviously, you probably can't overshare in regards to confidential or sensitive information, but again, it's about keeping them on the hook.
let's talk a little bit about culture because
Hmm.
you're essentially the master of cultural propagation in your role. You may not be the chief Kool-Aid brewer, that still we leave to the CEO, but you're the one who's filling up the cups on an ongoing basis. And what's been your role in defining and supporting and staying true to your culture and values as you've built your team?
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right, Daryl. I think kind of typically human resources or people and culture has always been seen as the owner of company culture. But at Fluent Commerce, we really highlight everyone in the company has an equal role to play. So hopefully everyone has got that Kool-Aid kind of bucket that they kind of are bringing to the table every day. And the way that I see company culture, it's not about throwing perks and benefits to employees. I've definitely seen that at larger organizations, and it it brings a culture of Oliver Twist. Please, sir, going to have some more. Kind of what's next that you can give me. The amazing perks are then kind of never enough for employees, and it doesn't necessarily make them happy. For us, it's about how we run, the little things that make up part of the DNA. So, in terms of how everyone plays that role, leaders approve the initiatives that shape it, middle managers put the initiatives in action, but the employees really strengthen the company culture by supporting its ideals, and HR is really at the heart of it all. So, in terms of putting that into actual day-to-day practice, in employee meetings, company communication, leadership strategy sessions, we always keep the company's kind of mission, our vision, values at the forefront of everyone's mind, as the foundation of the company culture as well. So when I joined, we had feedback from employees that there was a lack of kind of reward and recognition that supported really positive behaviors tied into our company values. So, initiative that I implemented was a peer-to-peer kudos recognition, which was really to give like a public shout out for someone who's gone above and beyond. They may have solved a problem, overcome a roadblock that's been kind of stuck in other teams or individuals' way. And we've had like amazing engagement. What we did also, we have a kudos winner every month. And last year, when we brought everyone out to Sydney for our company retreat called Fluent Fest, we actually had a private kind of VIP thank you lunch for all those kudos winners as well. So, and that was kind of awesome to see. For me, they're kind of the the most valuable players within the organization. We also have done values sessions as well. So we kind of want to make adjustments and evolve our values over time as well. And that's really important. And that gets everyone bought in to feeling part of the company's kind of mission as well. We often over communicate. So we have a bi-weekly huddle both for the Pacific and Atlantic time zones, and we share kind of where the company is at in kind of all manners, from financials to our OKRs and strategy to initiatives we're working on, and also things that we want to kind of celebrate or say we want to get a little bit better at that. So that's really important as well in terms of building that company kind of culture, and kind of really making it sticky as well. And the last thing I'll share, Daryl, to the listeners is about promoting that culture of continual improvement as well. So we do engagement surveys twice a year, and it's anonymous. So we don't try and identify who's saying what, but we ask a whole bunch of different questions about company communication, career development, remuneration and benefits, our values, and we get some amazing feedback from employees. And what we do with that feedback is we actually then really make that our blueprint in terms of what we want to focus on, what we want to target, and we then communicate and report back to the business as well. So folks feel that they've been listened to, they've been heard, and as opposed to engagement surveys that I'm sure we've done in the past and we filled it out, invested half an hour or an hour, and then we never hear anything about it. So kind of listening and actioning to feedback is always super important.
You report back to the business leaders, which ultimately leads to the CEO. And as Fluent has grown, it's gone from a startup into an ongoing concern. And necessarily, the CEO can't attend every interview or even most interviews. They have to increasingly delegate that, but they still have to be a part of key hire decisions. And what did you seek from your CEO as your leader and partner in the recruitment process in terms of engagement and disengagement?
Yeah, our CEO is really invested in the recruitment, hiring, and overall employee experience process. So you're right, when we were smaller, he did have the luxury of being involved in more interviews, which he actually loves to do, and still every now and then will, when there is capacity, will be part of those. But there is definitely delegation towards the senior leadership team to be involved in the decision making process as well. So, really, kind of the support, embracing the process, being that ambassador is the greatest gift that we have from our CEO. He really does also put that trust and really the trust and respect back into the decision makers. So he'll empower a hiring manager to make that final call if they've done their due diligence. Obviously, depending on the type of role, he doesn't need to be involved in all the interviews, but he also does look at the employee onboarding feedback as well. That gets reported back up to C-level. And so he'll kind of know if things, if the sentiment from new hires has been really positive, or if there's potentially a shift that we need to do as part of our process as well. So it's that continual improvement and evolution that he's super passionate about, which is awesome.
Well, he sounds like a wonderful man, and a very insightful one, that he's taking into account what people actually think of him as being important in the interview process.
Mm,
I've actually found that not always to be the case with founding CEOs, but it's very refreshing to hear that he's taken such an active interest in promoting a positive engagement experience for everybody at Fluent Commerce. Well,
absolutely. And he even seeks feedback in regards to tell me how you found the interview process to date. So it's not just a one way, I'm going to ask you 10 questions and that's the interview done and dusted. It's Also, speak to me about any kind of concerns you may have, or what have you read about the company, which is fantastic because it's that kind of two-way dialogue as well. It also allows the CEO or any member of our leadership team to debunk any myths or kind of fact check anything that potentially was inaccurate, or and even just like share kind of, well, here's what the next 12 months of the vision looks like. Here's why we're so excited and passionate about the company's growth, and why we want you to be part of that journey as well. So we even do use it as a bit of a final sales pitch as well, especially if a candidate has potentially got 2, 3 opportunities or offers on the table. We always want to be number one.
Well, I mean, you touched on, again, a key point when interviewing, particularly executive hires in the role of the CEO. And they have to be very receptive to the idea that the candidate's a buyer in this situation and they do need to be sold. Even at that final stage, they need
Mm.
to feel welcomed. They need to feel valued. They need to feel heard. They need to, and actually soliciting their feedback on the process is a magnificent step, but yet one that is often lacking in most executive hires and most line level hires. Actually asking the candidates what they thought of the whole process. What do you think of my people? What do you think of my company? What appealed to you? What did you enjoy? What can we do better? I mean, those sorts of questions mean that your offer will win out over the other two or three, even if you don't have as competitive an offer, because the candidate's going to feel like they're going to have a better experience as an employee. And I can't overemphasize that enough. It's a competitive market out there in commerce technology and in technology in general. So those companies that do a great job of coaching, sounds like he didn't have to really coach your CEO. Sounds like he was on the he was pretty much is in the game. Uh,
He's very much in the game, so we actually learn a lot from him in terms of what he kind of passes down. But also, he's also very receptive to new things that he learns across kind of the conversations he has with candidates. So it's a two-way street.
what has been your experience bringing aboard? I would have to say, very experienced professionals into a startup environment. Individuals that have had 20, 30 years experience. What's been that been like for you?
Mm. Look, it's very much kind of taking them on the journey, kind of explaining the why. We've seen kind of folks who have had very long um, length of service at one organization, and there's often kind of that idea or kind of concern or worry that they're going to bring kind of all their bad habits, or they haven't been agile in the sense of they haven't moved on to somewhere else. And we very much well, let's actually kind of look at the other light of that, in the sense of they have demonstrated loyalty. They have probably built up a fantastic kind of professional network in that space. And we have hired folks at Fluent Commerce, and they have been at other companies for 10, 20 plus years, and they've been some of our best hires as well. So I often do know that there is kind of that worry and concern about, um, and it goes both ways. Someone who has got fairly maybe short stints of employment at multiple companies, it's about asking the questions. Like, there's always a story behind everything. And likewise, for the flip side, for folks that have maybe not moved around much or at all, and but they've also got that story. Like, I stayed at this company for 20 years because I absolutely love the culture. I was continued to be given opportunities to grow in my career. So it's always about kind of like digging in a lot more and kind of being that investigator as part of that process.
I'm continually amazed at how often candidates are overlooked because they have
Mm.
had a long track record of experience when they're being interviewed by a startup. And it seems lost to many from younger generations that these folks that have been around actually might have done what they've done because of passion. And that even though they've got 2, 3, 4 decades of experience, they've been where they've been because they've been passionate about it. And that is the key to success in any role, is that it speaks to your core mission, to your core values, to your core goals. And everything else is just noise.
We have built a pretty sticky organization really by listening to employees. Like we try and anticipate, address their concerns. We foster that psychological safety within the business. We give them a sense of purpose and belonging. And we measure outcomes as well. So um, we always kind of, and I mentioned this earlier in regards to we run engagement surveys. So we really ask employees, we want to get their finger on the pulse. Like we can build the best programs, we can write the best policies, but if they're not important and aligned to our greatest asset in the company, which is our people, then we're kind of wasting our time. So um, in terms of that stickiness, that's super important. Um, and as I kind of said as well, like high performance, high retention culture isn't about adding those perks. It's about kind of maximizing opportunities for people to learn from one another. So um, I kind of feel that employees want to be personally and professionally invested in companies. They seek purpose over a paycheck, and they want coaches over a boss as well. One initiative that we rolled out in the last 12 months has been Lunch and Learns, which isn't hugely groundbreaking and innovative, but we had a engineering team within Build It, and we had the continual feedback of, I want to continue to learn. And you don't need to have huge pockets and budgets to buy like a huge learning management platform. The Lunch and Learns were really a roundtable rotation between our engineering team to talk about, here's actually what I've been kind of learning about. Here's what I've been kind of doing on the weekends as like a little side project, or actually this is applicable to what we're working on at the moment, but it's actually, I found kind of some roadblocks and ways to get around this. It started off slowly in the sense of course, no one wants to put their hand up and say, I'll go first. But really, after we had two kind of lunch and learns, it was like a snowball. We've already got folks who are saying, I'm loving this so much. We record them, we add them on our intranet. So we've got that knowledge bank, which is fantastic for new hires. They can come back and look at all that content. And we've even now got folks saying, I did mine 3 months ago, but I'd love to kind of go again. Like that was so much fun.
Putting more tools in any individual's tool belt is going to win their hearts and provide value to them. So the fact that you're actually doing that as a department for the rest of the organization is marvelous.
Absolutely. And the great thing is we can then look to scale that out to product or to a marketing team or really kind of any parts of the business. So super easy and simple, but it can make a really big difference to the culture and that stickiness.
Well, I'm going to ask you a very special question right now that I almost never ask anyone, but just between us. Is there a particular job that you're having a difficult time filling right now that you'd like to ask our listeners to help you fill?
That's a great question.
Just one. You just get one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, this is going to be a very out of left field, but it's our first finance role that is going to be based in France. So we are actually in the process, or we will be soon, setting up a French legal entity. And we need someone who is that kind of financial analyst, someone who has been through that process before. They are going to be in a kind of single role. So there's no kind of team underneath them at this stage. But it's a tricky market because again that notice period. But in all seriousness, it's also about we do have kind of a sales team, kind of expert services, customer success in France, but um, we don't know that market in the finance world too well. So if you do have any listeners who have had experience in that space, or even can share any kind of insights in terms of what they've seen, that would be fantastic. Would love to have a virtual coffee.
It's generous of you. Well, any final thoughts?
Look, I guess like a final thought is, and I thought this question to myself: what would I share to myself if I was kind of starting my career, if I was 18 or kind of just maybe kind of finishing college? And really kind of my biggest kind of reflection is spend time with yourself and figure out who you are and what you love. Like, don't end up in a role or a vertical that you're either not going to love or fall out of love with. So I always say to myself, if you invest in yourself, you can never lose. And over time, that might change with like the pace and the trajectory of your life, but always be that continual learner as well. Like, always be inquisitive. There's often kind of like a whole bunch of free training courses you can do. There's webinars you can attend. There's a lot of Slack communities that you can also be involved in. So be that continual educator and learner. And with that, I feel like you can never go wrong.
Well, I want to thank you for being so generous with your thoughts today about Fluent. As I'm going to put on my recruiter hat for a moment and just say to your 20-year-old self, I would consider a career in human resources within the tech community. I think you'd be exceptional. And that's just my 2 cents. But honestly, Fluent Commerce sounds like an absolutely marvelous place, thanks to your fine work there. And I'm actually going to put in my resignation with myself for 3 months today. I'm an executive recruiter with 27 years of experience in the startup martech and e-commerce community and supply chain community, and I'd love to learn more about Fluent Commerce. So, Alex,
Absolutely. And thank you so much for inviting me on today, Daryl. It's been an absolute pleasure as well. Look forward to continuing the conversation with you as well.
thanks, Alex.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Mar Talks. Please leave a review and a rating on your platform of choice. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major podcast platforms. To find out more about how the Rosenstein Group can help you find the right leaders for your client development teams in martech and e-commerce, please visit our website, rosensteingroup.com.